Hey, it's time for the Georgia show. We're going to talk about the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Bunch of banged up dogs, but you know Georgia has other dogs ready to step up. We'll tell you who. Plus, we're going to talk about Hugh Freeze. Man, had some strange quotes this week that we cannot let go unchecked. And, you know, it used to be a pretty common theme that Auburn had recruits that Georgia wanted. Georgia had players that Auburn wishes it could have had. But that doesn't really happen so much anymore, at least not for Georgia's case. We'll break it all down right now on the Georgia Show. When we look at the Deep South's oldest rivalry, my man, you're getting ready to go to Jordan-Hare yourself, a couple days. It's an exciting place to be. For Georgia, though, Georgia fans, I think there's a little bit of trepidation here because there are so many banged up dogs. You had a piece on DawgsHQ.com about the dogs that are ready to step up, specifically on the defense. Which name are you specifically looking at that needs to have a big game for Georgia, not just to win comfortably, but to, stay a threat in this game?
Yeah, I'll say Jamon Dumas-Johnson. Maybe not necessarily somebody that's stepping up for a banged up Bulldog, but somebody that
he needs to step up for his own reasons, right?
Exactly. I mean, we spoke with him, and by his own admission, he's been average to start the season. That is not an average football player, guys, and he's not playing great. He's man enough to admit that, and I think that's going to turn around here before too long. So I think that, for Georgia, especially with the run game that Auburn wants to bring, those two quarterbacks that they've got between Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford, maybe not the best pairing. I mean, the fact that we're talking about two quarterbacks, if you've got two quarterbacks, do you have one? They've got a really good running back. In fact, they have two, maybe even three really good running backs. One of those guys is banged up this week, but Jarquez Hunter is healthy, and he's somebody that has, potential to have a big game. The way that you can slow down this Auburn offense, and if they're not slowing themselves down, is to keep that run game bottled up and force those quarterbacks to make plays. Jamon Dumas-Johnson is somebody that is a great run defender. He's said, hey, I don't feel like I've been the best against the pass and getting out to the edge. Let him, he's got to have a big game. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about it. I'm putting him on my players to watch tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. And we haven't beaten up on the guy, but we all know, and he knows too, that he's not playing up to the standard of, not only his own play, but the standard that is set for Georgia defenses. And that's not even, calling out individual guys. That's just what Kirby Smart and Schumann and Will Muschamp expect out of that middle linebacker position. You got to be the quarterback on the field. And for people to be critical of Carson Beck, if you're going to be critical about somebody on defense, your eye should be pointed to that middle linebacker position if things aren't up to snuff. So I'm with you, man. We've seen him deliver. Now, what I go back to is the fact that in the preseason, we had that story that Kirby had to bring him into his office and show him, hey, man, you are not playing up to the standard.
Smile London too. I mean,
and Smile too. Yes.
There.
Yeah. So yeah. I'm not saying that he's still not. I'm not saying that he's loafing by any means. I just think, it's human nature, guys. You've won back-to-back national championships, and sometimes you need a little bit of a wake-up call. You need a little bit of a kick in the rear, and that's going to happen. That happens to everybody in their jobs from time to time, and certainly on the football field. So I think if Jamon Dumas-Johnson does pick up his play at Auburn, that is going to be huge for Georgia, and it's going to be something that will be very well received. I did also, checking out your piece about the next man up. We don't really know much about Javon Bullard. I think we presume that he'll be ready to go. I liked what I saw from Dan Jackson, though, against UAB. He was flying around, and he was ready to play. Dirty Dan was not slowing down. He was the quintessential all gas, no brakes player against UAB.
Well,
competition steps up as Georgia's season goes along, of course, but I thought that was pretty encouraging to see from Georgia's secondary.
Absolutely. And it's encouraging to see from Dan, because that's somebody that, even going back to 2021, he was a contributor in that secondary. And whether Javon Bullard is out there or not, Dan Jackson is going to be getting snaps. He's going to get more if Javon Bullard is not available, but he's going to get snaps regardless. And to have the kind of injury that he had at the position that he plays, a foot injury last year, Kirby said, hey, I think he's just getting back up to speed. And that's what Dan Jackson is known for. He's known as a fast guy, physical guy, somebody that is, ready to roll. And so, I think that Dan Jackson, like him or not, he's going to be out there, guys.
Oh, we love him.
It's good. It's a good thing that he is getting back to the full speed that he was, prior to the injury.
From the chicken capital of the world. What's up, Jake Roos? How are things up atop the mountain this evening?
Little rainy up here, but we're making do. And I want to point out, you guys were just talking about Dan Jackson, number 3 in the safeties and stars when it comes to snaps taken this season thus far. Only bested by Tyke Smith and Malachi Starks. So
wow,
he's been pretty crucial.
Outstanding.
Even when Bullard was healthy, he was still getting run. So don't let people. Don't let your biases confuse you. Dan Jackson's beating out really good players to get playing time.
Yeah, you got that piece up at DawgsHQ right now, right? Full breakdown, Roos, on ounce and what?
My bad. That was me. I automatically muted. I accidentally muted you when I made.
Yeah, I was like, "What happened? Did I mute myself with my mind? What just happened?" Yeah, but that's cool. Check out DawgsHQ.com right now for Jake Roos's breakdown on what the Dogs have done from a participation standpoint. Some fascinating stuff there, and some context needed, of course, with the injuries Georgia's had. But as we continue to say, as long as this doesn't become a trend for Georgia, hopefully someone can stick a thumb in the dam right now. That's a lot of Dogs getting reps early on in the year.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I was kind of struck with that, especially on the defensive front and at outside linebacker. To me, that was probably the most interesting position of them all, because outside of Chaz Chambliss, man, it's almost neck and neck in terms of who's getting opportunities at that position. So, you've got Marvin Jones Jr., who's just slightly ahead of Damon Wilson, Darius Smith tied with Damon Wilson, CJ Madden following them closely, and Samuel Mpemba in the mix there too. Feels like they're kind of just waiting for somebody to break through there, man, other than Chaz. I mean, Chaz has gotten the majority of the snaps by a good margin, 50 more snaps than the next closest guy. But at the same time, it looks like they're looking for the number 2 guy there, and the competition based on the snaps feels like it's pretty wide open at this point.
Any Georgia players for you, Jake, as you joined us a moment after we started this topic here? Who are you looking at for Georgia that may be called upon, not a traditional starter, would not be starting if not for injury, but the Dogs need them, whether it's on offense or defense, to keep things comfortable against the Tigers on Saturday?
I think that you're really going to need Dylan Fairchild to play very well. And I think he has. And I feel like that offensive line really, to some degree, is maybe playing a little bit better now that he's in the rotation. It's hard to, judge that fully. But I think Fairchild's impact has been pretty noticeable. Now, I will cage that by saying how much of that is Dylan Fairchild and how much of that is just Dajan Edwards being a slippery guy. I mean, he's done a great job with that. So, I think that Fairchild on that side of the ball, defensively, it's kind of tougher because you're not as banged up as the offensive side, I don't feel. Obviously Dan's big. David Daniels probably going to get some run on Saturday too. So I would kind of circle those guys as guys that need to step up and just continue really doing what they've been doing, which is, I think, playing pretty well at this point.
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen these games go on and we've seen guys have to step up that are still feeling their way out, I understand why fans are a little bit frustrated, because you're seeing a team that is truly a work in progress, and you have not had any rhythm this year, offensively or defensively. And I think a lot of those injuries have a lot to do with that. But then you look at the scores and you're still dominating. And I think Georgia still has a good chance to dominate at Auburn, even with the platoon that it brings up there now. it is encouraging that you may be bringing Lawson Lucky up there. You may be getting Ladd McConkey back. We don't fully know about that yet. But those are two big additions. And then we haven't spoken much about Mykel Williams either. And he had a short-lived absence, we presume, against UAB. Getting him back, you're getting a little bit of consistency there on defense and on offense if Ladd is able to go. We don't really expect Lawson to get meaningful snaps, but at least you got some depth there tied in. For a while, it was just Brock and Oscar.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Mykel, and he was another guy that kind of caught my eye in the snap count, really his position group. You're talking about that defensive front. It is tight, man, between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like 8 guys are pretty tight in that race. They've had 12 guys featured on defensive line this year. And, the top 8 guys are separated by 30 snaps. But, the first 3 are 19 snap difference between them. And then you kind of get into the meat of the order, Nazir Stackhouse and Mykel Williams, 79 snaps. Jordan Hall right there was 76 himself. So that was quite interesting for me to see. Again, it feels like they're rotating a lot of guys through at that position as well. And I think that that's probably to Georgia's benefit down the line as they continue to move forward, because they're building depth with this defensive front and keeping those guys fresh.
And I mean, they're getting experience with those guys, because you've got, right, like you said, a guy like Jordan Hall. They've only got 10 true defensive linemen. If you throw Gabe Harris in there, was recruited as an outside linebacker edge, you like to call it a slash Roos. He's working with the defensive linemen now. Even with him, you've only got 11 guys. With Tyrion Ingram Dawkins out right now, that number gets bumped down to 10 again. I mean, this is not the deepest group in terms of numbers, and so getting some of those younger guys reps is important, because you know what you've got in Warren Brinson, what you've got in Zion Logue and Nazir Stackhouse and Mykel Williams and Tramel Wildflower. Those 5, I think you feel very comfortable with. Christian Miller has gotten a lot of snaps, but he hadn't gotten that before this year. Like you said, Jordan Hall is a true freshman, so he hadn't obviously gotten a lot of snaps before this year. That has been big for that defensive line to get some of those guys, reps, just so that if you do have an injury, if you do miss somebody for a game or two, or, for however long, you're not throwing somebody that has never seen the field out onto the field.
Yeah. And I mean, Jamal Jarrett's another guy. He's averaging about 10 snaps a game right now. So, I thought that was interesting to see, certainly, but I agree. They've really done a nice job of kind of fleshing that room out and giving them an opportunity to, like I said, build depth there with the way that they've rotated that position.
I want to pat ourselves on the back, because I think when we were leading up to the season this summer, we spoke a lot about guys that would make an immediate impact. And I think we all at one point or another were pretty bullish on Hall. And he's proven to be the real deal as a young pup there.